Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a rather wet and raining Wednesday afternoon. What better way to spend the next half an hour or so? Safe indoors, dry and warm, than by talking about buzz rolls. So welcome to this buzz roll workshop. I'm going to spend the next half an hour or so, as my description says, ruminating about buzz rolls. Buzz rolls, I will start out by saying, in my very humble opinion, are a lifelong pursuit. So please don't come to this video expecting some magic bullet that is going to immediately give you access to silky smooth buzz rolls straight away. As you are all intelligent enough to know, proper technique, correct execution of a buzz roll takes a lot of practice, a lot of hard work, and a lot of time. That's really the crucial factor here. My buzz rolls I now consider to be pretty good. They could always be better, and they will get better as I progress, but it has taken me a long time to get to the stage I am at now. Nevertheless, I do feel I have some valuable advice or input to offer you for those of you that are really struggling with buzz strokes, but I just wanted to say straight from the outset, there is no magic bullet. It is time, persistence, okay? There are two main factors then when it comes to tackling buzz rolls and trying to achieve a clean and correct execution of the buzz roll. There is the grip, what we will call the technical aspect, the execution aspect, and then there is also the rhythmic aspect as well, because a lot of drummers have this misconception, or at least misunderstanding, that buzz rolls are just kind of a set speed. You do buzz rolls as fast as you can, regardless of the context, and that is absolutely not true. Buzz rolls have a rhythmic value. They must be in time, they must be in pulse, right? They must be in relation to the beat and the note value that you are playing. But we will come to all of this. So let's begin right at the beginning, talking about how we actually achieve a buzz, first of all. We're nice and zoomed in here today. I've not got my wide angle shot. We're nice and zoomed in on the snare drum, so hopefully you can see exactly what's going on here. And as always, please let me know if I'm having any technical issues with the sound. I can adjust everything. But straight away, we need to make sure our grip is working for us. I said this on the video I recorded about buzz rolls, but it is worth repeating. There are lots of different paths to the top of the mountain, right? If your grip looks slightly different to mine, or my grip looks slightly different to someone else's, that's okay, because all our hands are different, all our fingers are different, our physiology is different. So we are just trying to make sure we follow some basic principles and make that grip work for us. And the basic gist of what the grip is trying to do is to achieve control over how many times that stick bounces, right? I don't mean exactly. We're never going to be able to count exactly how many times that stick bounces, but there is a clear difference between this and this, okay? I can achieve both of those effects based on what I'm doing here. And by here, I mean my fulcrum. And the fulcrum is the part of the stick that pivots, the whole mechanism of what makes that stick pivot. Now for me, that fulcrum occurs between the thumb on the inside and both my middle finger and index finger on the outside. I hope you can see that there. So the stick is pivoting in that mechanism there. Now, if you just hold the stick out in front of you just like this, get those other two fingers out the way just for now, the stick should be sitting loosely. If you let that stick fall forwards with very little force whatsoever, that stick will naturally bounce, okay? If we do the same thing, but we apply a little bit of squeezing pressure on that fulcrum, you can see that bounce has kind of compressed, okay? By the application of pressure on that fulcrum, we've compressed that buzz down to a manageable amount. If I go all the way, if I squeeze as much as I can, we get a very tight, very compressed buzz, and my whole arm is tense and locked up. We don't want that. What we are trying to achieve here is a balance between too loose and too tight, where everything is choked. So by the slightest application of pressure, I can start to achieve a consistent buzz every time. And you can see this is achieved just by this fulcrum grip here. My ring finger and my little finger are not doing anything. Practically, when I play buzz rolls within part of a larger phrase, maybe I'm doing something, I don't know, something like that, where the buzz roll forms part of a larger phrase, my fingers are involved in all of that phrase except the buzz roll. So when I come to play the buzz roll, I just simply lift those off slightly. We don't need to stick them out the side. We don't need to sort of get rid of them. But they're not, for me at least, they're not generally involved because all of the work is being done from that fulcrum. So if you are just starting out with buzz rolls, as I said, be patient at this stage. What we are trying to do is achieve a level of consistency across both hands. And this is going to make you feel really, really bad about yourself because it's really difficult. But we are trying to slow these right down and get a consistent buzz hand to hand. And you will find your weaker hand, in my case, my left. This happens more often than not. You get a lovely right hand one, and then your weaker hand just can't find that same balance. So a lot of effort and time is needed where that left hand sort of mimics, it copies the right. So if you find you're able to get a really nice, crisp and clean, consistent buzz stroke on that right hand and not on your left or not on your weaker hand, one hand is doing something that the other is not doing. So either the right hand is doing something that the left isn't, or the left is doing something that the right isn't, and it is adjusting, it is affecting the buzz you're getting. So it's a kind of a game of analysis here. Play the stroke on your dominant hand, and if that's how you want it, now it's okay. What aren't you doing? What aren't you doing that you are? Have a look at your fingers. Actually turn over your hands. Have a look at your grip and you might find one finger is slightly out of place. Your thumb is higher up or something is different. If they look the same, then it's something to do with the pressure and where that pressure is being applied. But essentially, we're trying to make the fulcrum point in the left hand exactly the same as the fulcrum point in the right hand such that we can achieve a consistent buzz. Notice for both of these, I'm still playing from the wrist, right? There doesn't need to be any strange lateral or vertical movement on the forearm. These are all proper strokes. Played from the wrist. I'm still relaxed. I'm still using wrist strokes. I'm still in my, as if I'm playing single strokes, but just by the application of pressure on this fulcrum, I'm achieving that buzz effect. Now, this brings me on to a really important point. Buzz rolls are based on single strokes, not double strokes, okay? I thought for the longest time that buzz rolls were a double stroke rudiment. But they're not. Yes, you can collapse a double stroke roll down into buzz rolls, but for all intents and purposes, a buzz roll, a multiple bounce roll, a closed roll, whatever you want to call it, is based on a single stroke roll. This is going to come back and be important later on when I talk about the rhythm. But a really nice way you can practice this is to switch between single strokes and buzz strokes. And this is something that I think you find in master studies as well. You find a single stroke cadence, and then you copy the cadence with the buzz strokes. And you're building up that consistency. Remember, give this the time it needs, because if you're new to this and if your hands if those buzzes aren't happening for you, you've just got to be patient with it. You've got to just give it the time it needs. I can't tell you how long I spent at a pad or a drum just sitting doing this, going, what's the difference? Why is this so rubbish? And why is this so good at it? And one is doing something the other isn't. So you have to find for yourself what your weaker hand isn't doing that your strong hand is, or vice versa. But we are basing this off our single stroke rolls. And what's happening there, I play matched grip, obviously. From this position, my fingers are all engaged, right? My fingers are on the stick, and they are engaged when I play the single strokes. When I switch to the buzz strokes, it's very difficult to see, but all the action happens on the fulcrum here, and these back two fingers, they just loosen ever so slightly to give that stick room to move at the back. If I do it sideways on, you can see I'm exaggerating slightly, but you can see these fingers have left the stick. So single strokes. Hopefully you can see that slight movement there. Again, I'm exaggerating it so you can see it. But otherwise, that stroke is still coming from the wrist as normal. Now, a technical note at this point, it is very, very easy in the process of applying a little bit of pressure in your fulcrum to tense the forearm. So you can quite easily go from a nice relaxed stroke to a tense, locked up stroke. If you want to play consistent, smooth buzz rolls, you've got to be relaxed as you would with any other stroke. We can't have your forearm tense, okay? So it's kind of, again, it's a balancing act by applying a little bit of pressure on the fulcrum, but maintaining relaxation up your forearm. If you find your whole arm tenses up when you're applying that, it's too much. You need to isolate the wrist from the forearm. Now, the good thing about a buzz roll is it doesn't need to be fast. Okay, you can do this nice and slowly to really allow yourself to focus on the clarity. Now, at this stage, there's no tension whatsoever. It just kind of feels like bouncing a basketball. I'm just doing a slight up and down, maintaining a constant and steady pressure on that fulcrum. And the tip of the stick and the drum head is doing all the work for me. And then I can really focus, I can relax into that, and I can focus on the consistency. Make sure your tips aren't wandering, because you might find if you're sort of getting a little bit if your focus is wavering a little bit, you might start to find those tips drift apart, and that's not a good thing, because we want to focus on our sound as well. I'm going to come on to the rhythmic part in a minute, but this execution I know is what trips up a lot of people. The execution here is really, really challenging, and I really can't stress that enough. If you feel you are no good at buzz rolls, you're not alone, all right? They are really, really difficult for me, and I genuinely consider this a lifelong pursuit. Now, for those of you that play what we can consider French grip, where your thumbs are on top, the grip looks slightly different, but the principle is the same, okay? This time, your fulcrum is horizontal. So that stick is resting on the top of your fingers with the thumb on top. For me, we can consider that fulcrum vertical in that the stick is hanging in the gap. For French grip players, your fulcrum is kind of top and bottom, where the thumb is on top and the fingers are underneath. Now, it's the same thing. If you start in this position and you let the stick fall forwards, there's your bounce. Now it's just a slight bit of downwards pressure with the thumb to achieve the same thing. Again, I'm exaggerating their position, but these back two fingers are not involved in that technique. That's all coming from a slight downwards pressure on the thumb. So, regardless of your technique, no matter how far over you are, whether you're out in this position, or you're in here, or you're somewhere in between, that's really difficult to do. But the principle is the same all the way across. We're trying to apply a little bit of pressure on a dedicated fulcrum to control the amount of bounce we're getting. Too tight, and we get a choke. Too loose, and that's no use to us. We're trying to find a consistent amount. And then we alternate, right? If you have any technical questions, please stick them in the chat. Nice technique. Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you. As I say, if you have any specific technique questions, please stick them in the chat now, and I'll do my best to address them before we finish. So, while we are dealing with the technique, we also have to deal with the rhythmic application, because, as I said, we can't just as fast as we can and hope that we can play these in time. Buzz strokes, buzz rolls have to be in time, okay? Now, I gave you a clue to this earlier when I said that buzz rolls are based on single strokes. So think about when we play a single stroke roll, we play a particular subdivision, right? So if my hi-hat is keeping time, I can play, let's say, 8th notes. I can play 16th notes. I can play 8th note triplets. And that dictates the rhythm and how I am in time. If I've got a beat here and I just play with no relation to that beat, if I just play with no relation to that beat, I'm not in time. What I'm playing bears no relation to the beat, therefore I'm not in time. So when we play single strokes, we play on a subdivision. Because buzz strokes are based on single strokes, the same principle applies, right? So if I'm playing, let's start with 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I keep that rhythm the same, and then just turn each stroke into a buzz. I don't speed up, I don't go into some blazing fast thing like that. I just turn each stroke into a buzz, and I've maintained that eighth note rhythm, right? Now, as you can hear there, an eighth note subdivision at that tempo doesn't produce a particularly smooth buzz roll because it's just slightly too slow. So what we can do is we can step up the rhythm scale. Let's try eighth note triplets this time. The tempo stays the same, the subdivision increases. So I'm in triplets this time. 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. That sets my rhythm, and then each single stroke becomes a buzz. 3 under, 4 under, 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. Okay, you can hear that the rhythm is derived from the underlying single stroke roll. Now once again, eighth note triplets at that tempo, a little bit too slow to produce the desired effect. So let's step it up again, 16th notes. So our rhythm, 1 E under, 2 E under, 3 E under, 4 E under, turn those to buzz rolls, keep the tip speed the same. And it starts to sound more like the sort of buzz roll we can use, the sort of buzz roll that we can insert into our phrasing generally. Notice that buzz roll is pretty much now, we'll explore further up the rhythm scale in a moment, but it's pretty much now at a stage where it's usable. That is fast enough to do the job we need it to. We might want to increase the density, but that's a choice at this stage. At this stage, that buzz roll is usable, and I'm moving no faster than that. My hands haven't changed. I've not doubled up the rate that I'm playing the strokes. The stroke speed is still the same. 1 E under, 2 E under, 3 E under, 4 E under, 1 E under, 2 E under, 3 E under, 4 E under. If you just watch the movement of my wrists, you see that the rhythm is coming from that single stroke roll. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay. Let's step up now. Let's try quintuplets. And this is an important point. If we try quintuplets, we get a slightly different pulse within that buzz roll. So quintuplets. Groups of 5 against the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we're approaching a subdivision where we really get a nice, dense buzz roll, and we can start to do some interesting things with it. So this time I'm going to stick with the quintuplets because it's quite an interesting sound. I'm going to do a slight accent on the beat. Now in buzz roll terms, that accent is going to come from a kind of pulse, right? Listen to this. The accents are kind of incorporated into the buzz simply by playing them louder or with more force. And see, that comes from a stick height, a tip height, just as it would in your single stroke roll accents. So if you're accenting a quintuplet single stroke roll, we can see that the accent is coming from a raised tip height. We can do exactly the same thing with the buzz rolls. And that shows us our pulse. Okay, and we can incorporate that rhythmic pulse into our buzz roll. It's not necessarily desirable because usually, not always, but usually we are looking for a smooth, consistent buzz roll where everything would be the same dynamic. But not always. Let's up it again, and let's listen to this buzz roll as a sextuplet now, a grouping of 6. hopefully now you're starting to hear the rhythmic pulse that is maintained when I play the buzz roll. Shall I try a 7? I'm not sure if I'm confident enough to do a septuplet. We're getting to the limit now. I'm just going to try a 30-second note just to prove a point. Okay, that's right on the limit of what I'm capable of there, and I'm starting to tense up. But the point of me doing that is to show you how you have to kind of decide on the subdivision you are using based on the effect you want. So if our tempo is a sort of steady, I don't know what that is, 90 BPM, 100 BPM, something like that, maybe a bit faster, we kind of have a range in which our buzz roll works. We know that eighth note triplets are too slow. We know that 30-second notes are verging on unplayable, depending on your technique. And even if they were, that might just be too dense to sound good. So we're trying to find that sweet spot. Let's knock it down to sextuplets. And we get a nice sort of middle ground where it's dense enough to be smooth, but it's playable and it's comfortable as well. So we are combining two things for these buzz rolls. We are combining the control of your pressure on the fulcrum to achieve the actual controlled stroke with the subdivision found of your single stroke roll. So whatever subdivision you find yourself in, it is possible technically to turn it into a single stroke roll. That doesn't mean it is easy, or it doesn't mean that you have the required technique, but technically it is possible, because whatever your single strokes are doing, they can become buzz rolls just by incorporating the buzz, right? So whenever you are in, let's say, a ternary time signature, what they sometimes call a compound time signature, like 6/8, well, the pulse is set by that eighth note, those groups of 3 eighth notes, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... And it's up to you to decide, well, if I turn those into buzzes, is it smooth enough? Is it too slow? Is it too fast? Is it unplayable? Or maybe I'm going to up it to the next subdivision up. It's kind of up to you at that point. But my main goal here was to demonstrate how these buzz strokes absolutely have to be in time. So I've got an excerpt here from de l'Écluse, deux études. I've got etude number 1 here, and I'm not going to attempt to play the whole thing because I've not worked on it for a little while. But there are some fantastic buzz rolls that end without an accent. Because it's very easy to think that every stroke after a roll is an accent. Whereas what de l'Écluse gets you to think about is how you can finish that buzz roll with just a tap. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is a really nice way to practice your touch with these. If we think of 1E and a 2E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3, 4, 1E and a 2E and a 3, 4, 1E and a 2E and a 3, 4. That's a nice little alternating pattern you can use to just work on your touch where you're trying to not accent the final stroke. So really slowly. Notice I started with the left that time, back to the right. Alternating. And then you can try doing it with a different subdivision. Let's try 6s this time. 1 and a 1 and a 2 and a 2 and a 3. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 30-second notes. I don't know if I'll be able to at that tempo. No, I can't at that tempo. So that gives you an idea of your rhythmic capabilities. Finally, to finish this off, we can think about the location on the snare drum where you actually play these rolls. So for the most part today, I've been right in the middle of the snare drum head, giving us a crisp, clean roll. If we want to start playing with the texture of these rolls, we can start moving towards the edge of the head, right? So listen to how it changes the sound of the roll based on how close my sticks are to the edge of the head. Really nice crescendo effect. Maybe we want a nice big crescendo in this roll. We can start nice and slow, right up at the edge. Nice and quiet, not slow. And then as we get louder, as we crescendo, we move into the middle of the head. There are various ways to do this. It's personal preference. You can start actually on either side of the drum. You could be, I don't know, you could be stylish and you could come top and bottom. Doesn't really matter, we're just choosing where on that head we want to play the roll to get the desired sound. Okay, I think that's enough for now. Hopefully that's given you guys something to think about. I've covered the execution and I've covered the rhythmic elements, and they're really the two main things, and don't do one without the other, right? When you're practicing this, try and incorporate the rhythmic element right from the start. This is where that master studies exercise comes in, so tie it into your single strokes. If that roll is too slow, you can either increase the tempo or you can increase the subdivision. And you can get your desired results that way. But please remember that this takes time. Don't beat yourself up if you have a weak buzz roll. We all did at some point, and it is a lifelong goal. So don't worry if your hands look different to mine, to somebody else's. You've got to find the fulcrum point that works for you. You've got to apply the balanced amount of pressure to get the controlled buzz. You've got to avoid any tension coming up your forearm. We're trying to play completely from the wrists and the fingers, no forearm. And then we're trying to apply the subdivision to get the required rhythmic element correct, okay? Yeah. And then when you've got it, it's great fun, and then you can start to try and be creative with it. As I say, for me, it's a lifelong pursuit. I'm pretty happy with them now. I'm spending most of my time focusing on that left hand and trying to get rid of any last traces of tension throughout my forearms. When I'm playing right at the fastest, I'm still liable to a little too much tension here and here. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Let me know how you guys get on. And I hope to see you guys all on the next live stream. Please check the links in the description for video lessons and products and music and anything else that you might be interested in that I've got on the go. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.